Smith, indoors. And there's a good reason for that. Firstly, it's too early in the season, as I said last time. And secondly, there's a storm building up out there, which is, they've said is going to blow up to 30 metres per second, which is quite strong. So, no fishing today. But what there is a little look at split cane. Now, back in '93, a series came out in England called A Passion for Angling, and it was by the two anglers was Bob James and Chris Yates, and Hugh Miles, the wildlife photographer, filmed it all. You may have seen it, you probably have, an absolute classic. There's been other angling programs, series that have matched it in my opinion, but that was really when I got into split cane because of Chris Yates. He was a bit of a traditionalist and he liked split cane, and it was interesting, and I started using split cane, and funny enough I don't use it anymore. I sort of went, I didn't go off it, but well, that's life, isn't it? It changes and we move on and we go on to different things. But I thought today I'd do a little vlog on split cane. And split cane was, in its day, a bit of a... It was like carbon fibre today, and of course that's been replaced. So even that's a bit old-fashioned. But at the time, it was the new super material for fishing rods. Whoa, it was the business. And it was lightweight. A little point about the lightweight. When I got into these split cane rods, all the old boys said, oh God, your arm will ache after a day's fishing with that, I can tell you. And they all said, oh yeah, remember Ray Collingwood and Colin, Pete Cook's uncle Colin said, your bloody arm used to ache when you got home after all these heavy rods. But at the time, because everything's relative, this was the new racing car material. It was lightweight. And I've got a book from 1932, although this isn't the original edition. It was originally published in 1932. And it says, the pursuit of fishing has been made, perhaps, by lighter rods and finer tackle, an even more delectable pursuit, what it used to be. Even more delectable pursuit than what it used to be. Sorry, I'm not used to reading out loud. Yet I am not quite sure we, with our featherweight ideas, would no doubt grumble if we must go to Tweeside with the ponderous 18-footers that Harvey Otter and Harry Otter owned. So whether they must have been famous anglers of the time, an 18-foot rod. Now the predecessor, as far as I know, to split cane was Greenheart, which is nice and straight, but it is quite heavy. But it's just funny that there's this, it's Patrick R. Chalmers in 1932 talking of lightweight ideas, these being the lightweight ideas, and of course when the glass fibre came in, suddenly you realise how heavy split cane is. But split cane, yeah, it starts its life like this. This is a piece of dried bamboo, and it's still drying. It's going to take another year or so really before it's ready. And this is then split into sections, small sections, and it's dried. And it goes through this drying period for a long time. You know, if you're going into this business, you need to have time. And of course, the professional rod makers had all the stores rigged out so that they could get to the seasoned bamboo. But it starts off like this, and then it goes through a process of, it needs to be split, and then it needs to be planed. But first of all, we need to look at the actual, how does this work? What it is, I'm going to draw on this book for the information because it's by this man called A Master's Guide to Building a Bamboo Fly Rod by Everett Garrison. Garrison was a famous rod builder back in the pre-war years and during the war and a little bit after. And he was an engineer by trade. And I don't mean, not like today with all the computer programs and calculators and super scientific calculators. He did it when it was all pencil and paper. Now this I mean, it's just beyond me, you know, totally beyond me how he worked out all his tapers. Look at all this. Can you see that? There we go. Look at that. you don't really need to go into the details. All you know is that these men it was a very educated, clever man, physics and mathematics. Like I said, way beyond anything I can. So I don't go into it. But all his tapers, I'll explain the tapers in a minute, are here, and you can you can actually still follow his tapers for his different rods through this. But what happens is, it's 6 sections, hexagonal sections, and I've got a picture here. There we go. There we go. There. So you can see the 6 sections here, and they're glued together and then bound. And when I say bound, I mean these ties, these whippings. So what you've got is you've got your hexagonal shape at the end, and then it's planed to taper. So it goes from the thick here to the point here, to the tip here, which is thinner. And that works down from the butt, gradually down to the tip of the rod, and the amount of reduction is called the taper. So some rods will have they'll have a different action. Now, generally speaking, split cane is it's very slow compared to the modern rods. But we'll get onto that in a minute. So you've got the hexagonal all whipped together, and when these are glued together, they wrap it in string, and it goes from one end to the other that way, then the opposite way that way, and that makes it all tight, and the glue sticks. And of course, then it's hung up straight for the glue to go off, and then later on, it's all sanded off and then neatened up, and the rod's ready to go to the next stage, which is the ferrules. In the old days, they used these ferrules, which is quite nice actually. So there we go, a ferrule. We've got the female and the male goes into the female. No rude pun intended. There we go. So that's how the sections were joined together with these ferrules. And I've done it myself, but I'll get onto that later. So there we've got the basic idea. Garrison was an absolute perfectionist, and he made a lot of fantastic gear. Very, very distinct looking rods. We'll get onto that again in a minute. But for now, let's just say Garrison was a master. Another book, there it is the Idyll of the Split Bamboo. This is Dr. George Parker Holden. He's an American. And he wasn't such a perfectionist as regards the construction. I'll just show you a picture of Garrison himself, and that's his planing board. He's planing the strips to get the tapers. And he was an engineer, so he actually made his own plane out of steel. That's tempered steel. So it was really perfectionist, but still made by hand. Machines came out where they could just put the bamboo in and it came out tapered. Clever, but not handmade. His were handmade right to his death. And this guy, Dr. George Parker Holden, was a bit of a romantic. He was a sort of philosopher as well, and he made his own fishing rods, but not to sort of the perfectionism that Garrison did. And he made a planing board not out of tempered steel or hardened steel. He made it out of hard wood, oak or mahogany or whatever, a really hard wood. And he said that was adequate. He said that when he drank his bourbon, it always tasted better on the riverbank, out in the mountains, fishing for wild rainbow trout. Real nice, good book. And Garrison's is a good book, but it's just very engineer. Absolutely clever bloke. But there we are. I'm digressing into another world of a book review, and I'm not doing a book review as such. Although I should do one day, because I've got quite a lot of angling literature, old stuff. John Bickerdike, Harry Plunkett Green, Leo Walmsley. But anyway, back to the split cane rod. So let's have a look. So I got this one off Pete's uncle Colin, and I did this one up, and it's 11.5 foot, and originally a coarse rod with standoff eyes. But I re-whipped it and re-whipped the eyes on. So I just standard eyes because I was using it for worming. It's a nice rod for worming for grill saw. or sea trout. So that's what I use. I've actually used it with pike fishing as well, and it works. It's no problem. It can handle a 10-pound pike. So that's that one. I think we should actually go into a little bit of the history as well about the split cane. When did it start coming? The split cane started coming in the late 1800s. And originally, the bamboo used was from India, Calcutta cane. Days of Empire, the British were out there, and it was made sense that, oh, well, let's use that, that's there. But later on, they discovered that there was a better cane to use, a straighter cane, which was stronger and straighter, and it was Tonkin, which comes from China. Like everything, I suppose. But yeah, so the India cane went out of vogue, and the Tonkin started being primarily used, and it was from the late 1800s to the 60s was the day of the split cane. It wasn't cheap; it was expensive. Again, I'm just going to go back to some more literature. Let's have a look. Mr. Crabtree Goes Fishing. Many of you will have seen that. And in this book, Mr. Crabtree's tackle, it shows his rods, and his rods are used, or should I say made, of both whole cane and only split cane in the tips. So it's, you know, you didn't get these 12-foot long coarse fishing rods that were all split cane. The bottom sections were all cane, solid cane. Yeah, whole cane as it's called. And just the tip was split cane. Made it more affordable. Not everybody, people didn't have much money now in the old days. They were absolutely jack shit, to be fair. So, you know, when they got a rod, they kept it most of their lives. But the fly rods, that's what I started using as well. Was into fly fishing big in the early 90s. And I came across this lovely rod. It was in a little town called Beverley, and the fishing tackle shop was called Acril's. And this was a second-hand rod. Someone had died and they were selling it. It's made by E. Kerry Marston, Waddington, York. So that's an old producer. And this is, according to who I bought it off, is pre-war. So this is from the 30s, sometime in the 30s, and it's got a lovely brass ferrule which actually has a hook. So when you spin it into position, it locks it. There we go, that's locked. And a lovely brass ferrule on there. And the whippings, this has got intermediate whippings, and the early rods did have intermediate whippings. And that's often how you can tell the difference between the early rods and the later split cane rods, is these. Get onto that in a bit. But this is a 9-foot fly rod, and it's a big, long, floppy. It's so slow when you're casting the fly. It feels like you're waiting forever for the fly line to flex the rod and then push it forward. But it's also very old, and I've used it. Well, I've caught a few fish on it, actually, quite a lot of fish on it. But if you get a decent fish, it bends and then doesn't come back straight again. So it's hung on my wall in the fishing room. But there we are. That's a lovely rod. This rod is, I'll get rid of this piece of case. It's getting in the way a little bit. God, man, get rid of that thing. This rod is a new, well, it was built in the 90s, and again it's back to the Chris Yates thing, because I actually sent a letter to Chris Yates when he was working, doing a column for a magazine called Improve Your Coarse Angling, or was it Coarse Fishing, I can't remember. And he wrote back, I said, could you recommend a rod builder that could build me one of those rods? He said, yes, of course. So he sent me this letter, and then he recommended this Edward Barder character, who produces these real nice rods. And as you can see, there's no intermediate whipping, because it's new and they don't need them. Some of the rod makers carried on doing the intermediate whipping even after the war because of the aesthetics, because some people liked the look, they liked that old look. But most went on to, now this is a lovely rod, and this is an 11-foot it's called a Merlin. It's actually called the Chris Yates Merlin. And I've used this. These are standoff coarse fishing eyes, if you're not used to them. And this is a rod I've used. I've caught everything from minnows to perch, eels, sea trout on this, and brown trout on this, and grayling. Right, so I'm not bragging how many fish I've got, that's not, but I've used this rod for everything. It's beautiful. Lovely tapers, lovely thin blank. Real nice. Sometimes I think I should sell it when when you get a bit strapped for cash. You think, oh, well, I'll just get some money and I'll sell it. But I don't suppose I ever shall. But there we are. So that's the Edward Barder. So we've got the Millwards octopus. We've got this quite obscure make from between the wars, and we've got the Edward Barder. Now we're going on to another Millwards, which is a fly rod. And again, Colin Hine gets a mention. I bought it off him years ago. And it's a 9-foot fly rod in 3 sections. If I can get that out. Oh, yeah. There we go. In 3 sections. Again, it's a post-war model, so there's no intermediate rings. It's original. Everything's original. And this is a really fine tip. That's a real fine tip. Again, lovely ferrules, brass ferrules. And it's quite a light rod compared to the others. This is what's known in the game apparently as a blonde rod. Because it's not real. They burn the cane over a flame so it darkens, and it's darkened to different colours. Look how dark that is compared to that. So this is what's called a blonde split cane. Again, I've used this, I've caught trout on it, but it gets a set. It bends and then doesn't go quite straight again. And it's I don't want to wreck it. That'd be a shame. And you could argue, well, they're made to use, you know. But anyway, I don't. It's to keepsake. It's part of the collection. Well, when I got interested in split cane, I suddenly thought I might have a go at making one of those. And I got in touch with a company in England, in the south of England, in a town called Ware. Yeah, funny name for a town, Ware. That could end up like the Abbott and Costello who's on first base, but no, the town is called Ware. And I spoke with them, and they were real helpful, and they said, well, because I said I would like a 7'2" Garrison. Do you have the tapers? He said, we've got them all. He said, we can make you a blank. So basically, I got them to make me a Garrison 7'2" trout rod, and it was great. It was really interesting talking to them because they have been making split cane rods for years. But they said that back in the 60s, when the grass fibre came out, they said it was like overnight. The demand for split cane rods died overnight. It was that quick. He said there was nothing that, so they had to diversify into saddle making and all kinds of things. But the company did keep going, and after the Chris Yates series in the early 90s, they got a big people got interested again, and they made me a Garrison blank, and then sent me the ferrules and the cork and everything to build. But this is not the Garrison I've just seen. That's a different one. Right, let's have a look at this one. This is the Garrison. Come on, for fuck's sake. So it wasn't made by Garrison, but it's his blank. There we go. Lovely. No intermediate tapers. Whippings, should I say. This is an old rod bag I used. So there we go. And the butt finish there is very, very Garrison. You can always tell a Garrison rod. And Patrick Smith made that in 2008. Yep, nice rod. And it's for sort of a weight 4 or 5. So it's a light fishing rod. I use it for, or used it, I haven't used it for a long while, for spider patterns, fishing spiders. And there's the ferrule, of course, which I had to dress. Needs a bit of beeswax in it, I think. But yeah, so there's the nice, and again a blonde Garrison. But they had on offer at Chapman's, back to Chapman's, a blank by a man called Paul Young, another rod builder, American. And the Americans build short rods. I've noticed that they don't go for this long rods. Britain's always used real long fishing rods, and the Americans didn't go that route. They always, and consequently, this is 7 foot, and this is the and I've done the butt's different there. The reel seat's a different colour. And this is my dry fly rod, and this is only 7 foot, so it's real pokey. You know, you've got, it feels totally different to the long rods. It feels really sharp and boom, and you can really knock it's a lovely rod to use. In fact, now that I'm playing with these rods again, I'm thinking I might do some fly fishing this year. I haven't done it for years. So there we are. We've gone through different rods, but let's just go back one time to these intermediate whippings and why they don't need intermediate whippings on these, and it's all back to World War II. Because the weak point for split cane was the glue. They could use glue, and it was all made of hooves and, you know, and fish glue and all kinds of things like that. And it worked, and that's what they had, so you have no choice. But World War II was a time of great innovation, and one of the things that came from World War II was aviation glue. The glue was the key. And it was this new, strong, super strong glue that they made the aeroplanes out of. I think the Mosquitoes are an example of one. That was totally made of wood. So the plywood was all bent. Amazing that you can build an aeroplane out of wood. I mean, to look like it's built out of plate steel or plate aluminium. But it was cheap, you see. You know, cheap. So basically, after World War II, these split cane rods were built with this new glue, super glue. And it was the halcyon days, it was the glory days of split cane, but it was short-lived. As I said, so from 1945 to the late 60s, it was the time of the split cane. The best rods were produced. However, as I've said already, there was a little blot on the landscape, and that was the arrival of the glass fibre. And as the company Chapman said, it was an overnight sensation. Suddenly everybody wanted this glass fibre. And as it happens, I have some examples of the early glass fibre. This is a particularly interesting one because to look at the colour, you'd think, well, that looks like greenheart or cane. But the fact of the matter was, when they start, this is a Middleborough, made in Scotland. It's for 7. So this is for a 7 fly line. It's a fly rod. It's a double-handed fly rod. The reel seat's down here. So it's a small double-handed fly rod, probably for grills, which is the small salmon coming up, and sea trout. But look, the aesthetics. They've basically copied the colour of split cane. And they've got the brass ferrules, so it's quite interesting to see. Got this quite by chance. My brother gave me it. He found where did I can't remember where he got it from. He said, "Oh, you might want to use that." So there we go. This is one of the. If this was paleontology, this would be called a transitional fossil, I think, because it's going halfway. It's transitioning from the old cane, but they're holding on to the aesthetics. And then they realise it doesn't matter that much. People aren't bothered about it has to look like cane anymore. Suddenly they're thinking, oh, well, doesn't matter. The colour just doesn't matter. What's the point? I've got another early example of this is a 13-foot match rod, and this is made Bruce and Walker. It's a long while since I've had it out. And then again, I mean, it's a pretty plain colour. It's a plain brown, but it's a Bruce and Walker 13-foot match rod, and I got this from my brother, and my brother got it from the late Ken Crosley, who was a big figure in Hornsey, the town I grew up in. He was in India during the war with the army, time of the Raj, and an all-round good egg. Told some great stories, funny bloke. But yeah, but this was his, and then my brother got it, and then he said, well, you can have it, Pat, because you like using all that old-fashioned stuff. So that's the other glass fibre. So we've gone from the old through to the more modern, the new materials, and then we get to the real modern materials. Again, this was really about split cane, but I thought, well, let's just go right through. And then you get these modern rods. Oh man, what is this made of? I don't know. I don't know what the material is, but it's really fancy and totally different to what you'd see. This is a number 5. It's a Danish make. A. Jensen. And it's in 5 or 6 sections, 5 sections, each for travelling. And as you see, it's like a bluey colour. It's a sea trout rod. It's my sea trout rod. And it's a totally different kettle of fish. You can feel the difference in weight. It weighs nothing. There is a big difference in weight. But that's what it is. That's the modern age. So I'll put that away again. So it's been pretty much a talking vlog, a bit of looking at old stuff. I like the collection. I don't suppose I'll be building any more or buying any more. It's just what I've got. Maybe, who knows, in the future when I retire and I've got a bit more time on my hands, I might say, hey, I've got some cane out there, I might split that. But then I'll have to wait another... Who knows? We don't know what the future holds, do we? We don't know if we get a future. So let's leave it on that note. I think that's been... I hope you enjoyed listening to my ramblings about split cane. It's nice. One advantage it does have, it beats fish. Fish get tired really quick on it. I don't know why that is. But it's like I say, on this octopus that I did, I got a pike on that. I think it was an 8-pounder. I had it in no time. It was sat on its side, and you could argue, oh, well, maybe the fish was in bad condition. I don't know. But generally speaking, the idea was that split cane was good at tiring fish out. And as Ray Collingwood said, it's also good at bumping them off. Oh, get one and try yourself. That's all I can suggest to that. So what I'll do is I'll say thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, all the new subscribers. I hope you enjoyed this today. A bit of a chat, bit of a look at stuff. And that's part of the fun, isn't it? Collecting stuff. Right, what's the time? The time is 1:05. It's a Saturday. So I'm going to go out and start battening the hatches down. That wind's picking up. Right, I'm off. Toodaloo.